Welcome to Mira Stories. Welcome to stories that will keep you on edge.
Will you marry me?
Yes, I will.
Everyone in the small coastal town of Monterey Bay knew about Marcus and Isabella. They were the kind of couple that made others believe in fairy tales. Marcus, a successful architect with kind eyes and a gentle smile, had swept Isabella off her feet 5 years ago at a charity gala. Isabella, a pediatric nurse with a heart of gold and a laugh that could light up the darkest room, had been the town's sweetheart since childhood. Their love story was the subject of countless conversations at local coffee shops and dinner tables. The engagement had been nothing short of magical. Marcus had proposed on the very beach where they had their first date, with 24 white doves released into the sunset sky and a string quartet playing their favorite song. The entire town had celebrated with them, and when the wedding date was announced, everyone marked their calendars. This wasn't just any wedding, this was the social event of the year in Monterey Bay. As the big day approached, Isabella's best friend since kindergarten, 28-year-old wedding videographer Emma Rodriguez, had been given the honor of capturing every precious moment. Emma had built her business from scratch, turning her passion for storytelling through film into a thriving career. She had filmed dozens of weddings, but this one was different. This was her best friend's happiest day, and Emma was determined to create something extraordinary. Emma had spent weeks planning the perfect shots, scouting locations around the venue, and coordinating with the photographer. She had invested in new equipment specifically for this wedding, including a state-of-the-art camera with exceptional low-light capabilities and a drone for aerial footage. She wanted everything to be flawless, a testament to the beautiful love story she had witnessed unfold between Marcus and Isabella over the years. The wedding was set to take place at the historic Rosewood Estate, a sprawling Victorian mansion perched on the cliffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The venue was breathtaking, with manicured gardens, towering oak trees draped in Spanish moss, and a glass conservatory that would host the reception. Isabella had dreamed of getting married there since she was a little girl, and Marcus had made that dream come true. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Emma noticed something she couldn't quite put her finger on. Isabella seemed distracted, her usual radiant smile occasionally faltering when she thought no one was watching. When Emma asked if everything was okay, Isabella would laugh it off, blaming wedding stress and long shifts at the hospital. Emma wanted to believe her, but a small voice in the back of her mind whispered that something wasn't right. She pushed those thoughts away, convincing herself that she was just being overly protective of her best friend. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. The morning sun cast a golden glow over Monterey Bay, and not a single cloud marred the brilliant blue sky. Emma arrived at the Rosewood Estate at 6 in the morning, 3 hours before the bridal party was scheduled to arrive. She wanted to capture the venue in its pristine, untouched state, the calm before the beautiful storm of celebration. As Emma set up her equipment in the bridal suite, a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had filmed countless weddings, but the pressure of capturing her best friend's special day weighed heavily on her shoulders. She triple-checked her cameras, her backup batteries, her memory cards. Everything had to be perfect. Isabella arrived at 9 o'clock with her bridesmaids, her mother, and her younger sister, Sophia. The energy in the room was electric. Champagne was poured, tears of joy were already flowing, and laughter echoed through the suite. Emma captured it all, the way Isabella's mother carefully helped her daughter into the stunning lace wedding gown, the moment the bridesmaids gasped when Isabella turned around fully dressed, the tears streaming down Sophia's face as she placed the family's heirloom tiara on her sister's head. Through her camera lens, Emma studied Isabella's face. Her friend looked absolutely radiant, every inch the blushing bride. The makeup artist had done an incredible job, highlighting Isabella's natural beauty. Her dark hair was styled in soft waves, cascading down her back beneath the delicate tiara. The dress fit her perfectly, hugging her curves before flowing into a dramatic train. But Emma noticed something in Isabella's eyes, a flicker of something that didn't quite match the joyful atmosphere. Doubt? Fear? Emma couldn't tell, and before she could analyze it further, Isabella was swept up in another round of hugs and well wishes. Downstairs, in a separate wing of the mansion, Marcus was getting ready with his groomsmen. Emma's assistant, Jake, a talented young filmmaker she had hired 6 months ago, was capturing the groom's preparations. Through their connected headsets, Jake described the scene to Emma. Marcus seemed relaxed and happy, joking with his best man, his brother Daniel, and sipping whiskey with his father. Everything appeared normal, exactly as it should be on a groom's wedding day. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon, giving Emma plenty of time to film the pre-ceremony moments she loved most, the quiet, intimate instances that often meant more than the formal proceedings. She captured Isabella's father seeing his daughter in her wedding dress for the first time, the way his face crumpled with emotion before he pulled her into a tight embrace. She filmed the bridesmaids helping Isabella with her shoes, their laughter and inside jokes creating a soundtrack of friendship and love. As the clock ticked closer to ceremony time, Emma positioned her camera strategically around the venue. One would capture the processional from the back of the aisle, showing the guests' reactions. Another would focus on Marcus's face as he saw his bride for the first time. A third would provide a side angle of the couple at the altar. She had also set up her drone to capture aerial footage of the estate and the ceremony from above. Nothing would be missed. At precisely 2 o'clock, the string quartet began playing Pachelbel's Canon in D. The guests, over 200 of them, stood as the bridesmaids began their processional down the white carpet that stretched across the manicured lawn. Emma moved silently between her camera positions, capturing every angle. The bridesmaids looked stunning in their flowing sage green dresses, each carrying bouquets of white peonies and eucalyptus. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The music shifted to Wagner's bridal chorus, and Isabella appeared at the end of the aisle on her father's arm. A collective gasp went up from the guests. She was breathtaking. Emma zoomed in on Marcus's face, and she saw exactly what she expected: pure, unadulterated love and awe. Tears streamed down his face as he watched his bride approach. This was the shot every videographer dreamed of capturing. But as Emma panned back to Isabella, she noticed something odd. While her friend's smile was bright and her steps were steady, her eyes weren't focused on Marcus. Instead, they seemed to be scanning the crowd, searching for something or someone. Emma's stomach tightened with an unexplainable sense of dread. She shook it off, attributing it to nerves, and continued filming. Isabella reached the altar, and her father placed her hand in Marcus's with a tearful smile. The officiant, Pastor Raymond, who had known both families for decades, began the ceremony with a warm welcome and a prayer. Emma positioned herself to the side, capturing the couple's profiles as they stood facing each other, hands joined. The ceremony proceeded beautifully. Readings were performed by family members, each one emphasizing the sanctity and permanence of marriage. Marcus's mother read from Corinthians about love being patient and kind. Isabella's sister read from a poem by Maya Angelou. The guests were transfixed, many dabbing at their eyes with tissues. Emma made sure to capture these moments, the community of loved ones bearing witness to this union. Then came the vows. Marcus went first, his voice strong despite his emotion. He spoke of the day he met Isabella, how she had changed his life, how he had never believed in love at first sight until he saw her. He promised to stand by her through every storm, to be her rock, her partner, her best friend. He promised to love her unconditionally for all the days of his life. His words were beautiful, heartfelt, and genuine. Emma could see Isabella's eyes filling with tears. When it was Isabella's turn, Emma noticed a slight tremor in her friend's hands. Isabella took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice was softer than Marcus's had been. She recited her vows, promises of love and devotion that she had spent months crafting. But Emma, who had known Isabella for over 20 years, detected something in her friend's voice, a hesitation, a slight strain that suggested she was fighting something internal. The words were right, but something about the delivery felt off. Emma wondered if anyone else noticed, or if she was just being hypersensitive because of her closeness to the bride. Just as Pastor Raymond was about to pronounce Marcus and Isabella husband and wife, a commotion erupted at the back of the ceremony space. Emma's head snapped toward the disturbance, her camera instinctively following. A man was pushing through the guests, his urgent voice cutting through the sacred moment. "Wait. Please, wait," the man shouted, his voice hoarse with desperation. The string quartet stopped playing abruptly. Guests turned in their seats, shocked expressions on their faces. Marcus looked confused and angry, stepping slightly in front of Isabella protectively. But when Emma zoomed in on Isabella's face, she saw something that made her blood run cold: recognition, and not the surprised kind. Isabella had known this might happen. The man reached the front of the ceremony space, breathing heavily. He was roughly Marcus's age, tall and lean with disheveled dark hair and wild eyes. His clothes were wrinkled, as if he had been traveling for a long time. Emma kept filming, her professional instincts taking over even as her mind raced with questions. "Isabella," the man said, his voice breaking. "Please. You can't do this. You can't marry him." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Marcus's face had gone from confusion to fury. "Who the hell are you? Security. Get this man out of here." But before security could reach him, the man pulled out his phone and held it up. "My name is Adrian Torres, and I'm not here to ruin your wedding. I'm here to save Isabella from making the biggest mistake of her life. Because she's not who you think she is, Marcus. And you deserve to know the truth before you marry her." Isabella had gone pale, her bouquet trembling in her hands. "Adrian, please," she whispered, barely audible. "Don't do this." Emma's mind was reeling. Who was Adrian Torres? How did Isabella know him? And what truth was he talking about? She glanced at her camera's viewfinder, making sure she was still recording. Something told her that whatever happened next would be crucial. Adrian swiped at his phone screen and then looked directly at Marcus. "Isabella and I were engaged 2 years ago. We were supposed to get married. But 3 months before our wedding, she disappeared. She left me a note saying she needed to find herself, that she couldn't go through with it. I was devastated. I spent months trying to find her, to understand what happened. And then, 6 months ago, I saw her engagement announcement in a newspaper. To you." The gasps from the crowd were audible. Marcus turned to Isabella, his expression a mixture of betrayal and confusion. "Isabella? Is this true?" Isabella's eyes were filled with tears, but she didn't speak. She couldn't seem to find words. Emma zoomed in on her friend's face, capturing the raw emotion, the guilt, the fear. Adrian continued, his voice stronger now. "But that's not even the worst part, Marcus. The worst part is why she left me. The worst part is the secret she's been keeping from everyone, including you." He looked at Isabella with a mixture of pain and anger. "Tell him, Isabella. Tell him about the accident. Tell him about what you did." The silence that followed Adrian's words was deafening. Isabella stood frozen, her face drained of all color. Marcus took a step back from her, his expression shifting from confusion to something darker: suspicion, hurt, and the dawning realization that the woman he was about to marry had been keeping secrets from him. "What accident?" Marcus's voice was steady but cold. "Isabella, what is he talking about?" Before Isabella could respond, Adrian spoke again, his voice thick with emotion. 3 years ago, Isabella and I were driving back from a weekend in San Francisco. We'd been celebrating our 1-year anniversary. It was late, around midnight, and we were on Highway 1. Isabella was driving. He paused, his hands shaking. She was tired, and I told her we should stop and rest, but she insisted she was fine. And then it happened. Emma's heart was pounding. She glanced at Jake, who had moved closer with his camera to capture different angles. This was no longer just a wedding, it had become something else entirely, a revelation, a reckoning. Adrian's voice cracked. A car was stopped on the shoulder, hazard lights on. There was a family, a father and his 2 daughters, standing near their vehicle with a flat tire. Isabella didn't see them until it was too late. She swerved, but... He closed his eyes, the memory clearly painful. We hit them. The father was killed instantly. One of the daughters was critically injured. She was in a coma for 2 months. The crowd's collective gasp turned into horrified whispers. Isabella's mother stood up from her seat, her face ashen. Marcus looked like he had been struck. He turned to Isabella, his eyes pleading for her to deny it, to say that this was all some terrible lie. But Isabella's silence spoke volumes. She was trembling, tears streaming down her face, her chest heaving with suppressed sobs. Marcus, she finally whispered, I can explain. Explain? Marcus's voice rose, anger now overtaking his shock. Explain how you killed someone and never told me? Explain how you've been lying to me our entire relationship. I didn't mean to. Isabella cried out, her voice breaking. It was an accident. I was tired, and it was dark, and I didn't see them until... She broke down, her words dissolving into sobs. Adrian stepped closer, his expression softening slightly as he looked at his former fiancée. I know it was an accident, Isa. I was there. I know you didn't mean for it to happen. But what you did afterward, that's what I can't forgive. That's what he needs to know. Marcus turned to Adrian, his jaw clenched. What did she do? She ran, Adrian said simply. We were both in shock, but I wanted to stay, to call for help, to do the right thing. But Isabella panicked. She said we couldn't get involved, that it would ruin our lives, that no one had seen us. She made me promise not to say anything. She made me help her cover it up. Emma felt sick to her stomach. This couldn't be true. Not Isabella, kind, caring Isabella who dedicated her life to helping children. But as she watched her friend's face, she saw the truth written in every tear, every tremor. The guilt ate at me every single day, Adrian continued. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't function. I kept thinking about that family, about the little girls who lost their father because we were too cowardly to face the consequences. 3 months before our wedding, I told Isabella the first was going to the police. I couldn't live with the lie anymore. And that's when she disappeared. She left me, and I thought maybe she was going to turn herself in, to finally do the right thing. But instead, she just started over. New town, new life, new man. As if that family never existed. As if she could just forget. Marcus stood motionless, his mind clearly trying to process the magnitude of what he had just learned. Emma could see the internal struggle playing out on his face, the man he was, who valued honesty and integrity above all else, warring with his love for the woman he thought he knew. This is insane, Marcus said, his voice hollow. Isabella, tell me this isn't true. Tell me he's lying. Tell me this is some sick joke or a misunderstanding. Please. Isabella looked up at him, her face ravaged by tears and anguish. Marcus, I wanted to tell you. So many times I almost did. But I was scared. I was scared you'd leave me, that everyone would hate me, that I'd go to prison. I've been living with this guilt every single day, and meeting you, you made me want to be better. You made me want to leave that horrible night behind and become the person you thought I was. The person I thought you were? Marcus's voice rose to a shout. You mean someone honest? Someone with a conscience? Someone who doesn't commit a hit and run and then pretend it never happened? Adrian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded newspaper clipping. I kept this, he said, walking toward Marcus and handing it to him. The accident was reported the next day. The man's name was David Chen. His daughters were Emily and Grace, 6 and 8 years old. Emily, the 8-year-old, was the one in the coma. She survived, but she has permanent brain damage. She'll never be the same. Marcus took the clipping with shaking hands. Emma zoomed in on the yellowed newspaper article. Even from a distance, she could see the headline, "Fatal Hit and Run on Highway 1 Claims Local Father's Life." Below it was a photo of David Chen, smiling, with his 2 young daughters. They never found the driver, Adrian continued. The police investigated, but there were no witnesses, no traffic cameras in that area. The case went cold. That family never got justice. Those little girls grew up without their father, and their mother had to care for a brain-damaged child, all because we were cowards. Isabella sank to her knees on the lawn, her wedding dress pooling around her like a white stain. "I know," she sobbed. "I know what we did was unforgivable. I think about them every day. Every time I see a child in the hospital, I think about Emily and Grace. I became a pediatric nurse because of them. I thought if I dedicated my life to helping children, maybe I could somehow make up for what I did." "Make up for it?" Marcus's voice was filled with disgust. "You can't make up for killing someone by becoming a nurse in a different town where no one knows what you did. That's not atonement, Isabella. That's just more hiding." Emma's eyes were filled with tears as she continued filming. Part of her wanted to stop, to put down the camera and go to her friend, to try to fix this somehow. But another part of her, the professional part, the part that understood the importance of truth, kept her finger on the record button. This needed to be documented. The truth needed to be witnessed. Pastor Raymond, who had been standing silently in shock during the entire confrontation, finally found his voice. "Perhaps we should move this inside, away from..." "No," Marcus interrupted, his voice like steel. "Everyone here came to see a wedding. They deserve to know what kind of person they were about to celebrate." He looked down at Isabella, still kneeling on the ground. "Did you ever think about turning yourself in? In all these years, did you ever once consider doing the right thing?" Isabella looked up at him, her face a portrait of misery. "I tried once," she whispered. "About a year ago, I drove to the police station. I sat in the parking lot for 2 hours, trying to work up the courage to walk in. But then I got a call from you, telling me about the surprise you'd planned for our anniversary. You sounded so happy, so excited. And I realized that if I confessed, I wouldn't just destroy my own life, I'd destroy yours too. I couldn't do that to you. So instead you decided to marry me based on a lie?" Marcus's laugh was bitter and harsh. "Did you think you could just keep this secret forever? Did you think it would never come out?" Adrian spoke up, his voice quieter now. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I truly am. I know this is your wedding day, and I know this is brutal. But I couldn't let this happen. I couldn't let Isabella continue running from what she did. And you deserve the truth. That family deserves justice." Emma's mind was racing as she continued filming. She glanced at her assistant Jake, who was capturing reaction shots from the guests. The crowd had erupted into chaos. Some people were crying, others were arguing loudly about what should be done, and a few had already left in disgust. This was no longer a wedding, it was a trial with hundreds of witnesses. But as Emma reviewed the footage in her viewfinder, fast-forwarding through what she had captured so far, something caught her eye. During the pre-ceremony preparations, when she had been filming Isabella getting ready, her camera had been rolling continuously, even during a moment when Isabella thought she was alone. Emma's heart began to pound as she remembered. She had left her camera running on a tripod in the bridal suite while she stepped out to check on the ceremony setup. It was standard practice. Sometimes the best moments happened when subjects didn't know they were being filmed. But now, as fragments of memory surfaced, Emma realized her camera might have captured something important. She motioned to Jake urgently. "I need to check something," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the commotion. She moved away from the altar area, heading toward her equipment bag where she had stored her backup footage drives. Meanwhile, back at the altar, Marcus's family had joined him. His brother Daniel was trying to pull him away from the scene, urging him to leave. "Come on, Marcus. You don't need to stay here. Let's go." But Marcus stood firm, his eyes still on Isabella. Why, Isa? Why me? Of all the men in the world, why did you choose to build a relationship with me, an architect who literally builds his career on solid foundations and structural integrity? Did you think I wouldn't care? Did you think I'd just overlook something like this? Isabella had risen from the ground, her wedding dress grass-stained and dirty. Her face was puffy and red from crying. I didn't choose you because I thought you'd overlook it, she said, her voice hoarse. I chose you because you made me want to be better. Because you saw the good in me that I thought I'd lost forever. I fell in love with you, Marcus. That part was never a lie. But everything else was, Marcus shot back. Our entire relationship was built on a foundation of lies. You lied about your past, about your previous engagement, about the most significant event in your life. What else have you lied about? Emma, hunched over her equipment bag, had found the drive she was looking for. She quickly connected it to her portable monitor, her hands shaking as she fast-forwarded through the footage. And then she found it, the moment she had unconsciously remembered. In the video, Isabella was alone in the bridal suite. She was pacing back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear. Emma turned up the volume, straining to hear over the continued chaos of the ceremony-turned-confrontation. I know, Isabella was saying in the footage, her voice strained. Today is the day, and I'm terrified. What if Adrian shows up? What if he tells Marcus everything? There was a pause as she listened to whoever was on the other end of the call. No, Marcus doesn't know about you. He doesn't know about Adrian. He doesn't know about any of it. Another pause. I'm trying to start fresh. I deserve happiness too, don't I? After everything, don't I deserve a second chance? Emma's stomach dropped. So Isabella had been expecting Adrian to possibly appear. She had known this confrontation might happen, yet she had proceeded with the wedding anyway. But there was more to the call. Emma continued listening. The guilt never goes away, Isabella was saying, tears in her voice. Every single day, I think about what we did. I've been sending money anonymously to the Chin family for 2 years now. Every spare dollar I have goes to them. It's not enough, I know it's not enough. Nothing can bring their father back or fix Emily's brain damage. But I had to do something. Emma's head snapped up. Isabella had been sending money to the Chin family? That was new information, something Adrian apparently didn't know about. Emma looked back toward the altar where the confrontation was still unfolding. Should she reveal this? Would it change anything? In the video, Isabella continued, I contacted a lawyer 6 months ago. Confidentially. I wanted to know what would happen if I turned myself in after all this time. He said I'd likely face vehicular manslaughter charges, that I could go to prison for years. But more than that, Adrian would be charged too, as an accessory after the fact. I can't do that to him, even after everything. He was just trying to protect me. This is my burden to bear. Emma paused the video, her mind reeling. The situation was far more complex than Adrian's dramatic revelation had made it seem. Yes, Isabella had committed a terrible crime and covered it up. But she hadn't been living guilt-free and carefree as Adrian suggested. She had been trying, in her own flawed way, to make amends. Emma made a decision. She grabbed her portable monitor and headed back toward the altar. The truth was complicated, and everyone deserved to hear all of it, not just the parts that fit a simple narrative of guilt and innocence. Emma approached the altar area, her portable monitor held carefully in her hands. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She wasn't sure if what she was about to do was right, but she knew that the full truth needed to be revealed. Half-truths and selective revelations had caused enough damage. Wait! Emma called out, her voice cutting through the noise. Everyone, please wait. There's more to this story. All eyes turned to her. Marcus looked confused, Isabella's face showed a mixture of fear and resignation, and Adrian's expression darkened. Emma, what are you doing? Isabella asked weakly. I'm doing what I always do, Emma said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm telling the complete story. Marcus, Adrian, everyone, you need to see this. She held up the monitor, positioning it so both men could see the screen. Emma played the footage of Isabella's phone conversation in the bridal suite. As the recorded Isabella spoke about her guilt, her anonymous donations to the Chin family, and her consultation with a lawyer about turning herself in, the expressions of those watching shifted. Marcus's face, which had been set in stone with anger and betrayal, began to show cracks of confusion and pain. Adrian stepped closer, his eyes widening as he heard Isabella talk about sending money to the family and protecting him from prosecution. When the video ended, silence fell over the group. Marcus turned to Isabella, his voice barely above a whisper. You've been sending money to them? Isabella nodded, fresh tears flowing. Every month for 2 years. I set up an anonymous trust. I couldn't give them their father back, couldn't fix Emily's brain damage, but I had to do something. I had to help them somehow. Why didn't you tell me? Adrian asked, his voice cracking with emotion. Why didn't you tell me you were trying to make it right? Because I wasn't making it right, Isabella said, her voice filled with anguish. Money doesn't make it right. Nothing makes it right. What we did that night was unforgivable. I've been living in hell for 3 years, Adrian. Every child I help at the hospital, I see Emily's face. Every father who comes in with his sick kid, I see David Chin. I became a nurse to try to balance the scales, but they'll never be balanced. I know that. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, his wedding suit now rumpled and disheveled. So let me get this straight. You committed a hidden dear run, covered it up, sent your fiancé away when he wanted to come clean, started a new life with me, but you've also been secretly trying to help the family you hurt and you've been considering turning yourself in? It sounds insane when you say it like that, Isabella said, her voice small. But yes. That's the truth. I'm not trying to justify what I did, Marcus. There is no justification. I was a coward that night, and I've been a coward ever since. I kept telling myself that turning myself in wouldn't bring David Chin back, that it would only destroy more lives, mine, Adrian's, yours. But the real reason I didn't do it was because I was scared. Emma continued filming, capturing every raw moment. This was no longer just a wedding video, it had become a document of human complexity, of the impossible choices people make and the consequences they live with. Adrian moved closer to Isabella, his anger seeming to deflate. I've been so focused on my own guilt, on what we did, that I convinced myself you were just running away and forgetting. But you weren't, were you? You've been carrying this weight the whole time. Every single day, Isabella confirmed. When I left you that note, I thought I was protecting you. I thought if you didn't know where I was, you couldn't be implicated. I thought you could move on and have a normal life without the weight of what we did hanging over you. But I couldn't move on, Adrian said, his voice breaking. I've been in therapy for 3 years. I can't hold down a job. I can't have a relationship. The guilt has destroyed me, Isabella. And when I saw your engagement announcement, I felt this rage, this sense that you had escaped while I was left to drown. Marcus held up his hand, silencing them both. This is all very touching, but you both seem to be forgetting something important. There's a family out there, a widow and 2 daughters, who never got closure. Who never got justice. Your guilt, your therapy, your anonymous donations, none of that matters as much as their right to know what happened to their husband and father. He was right, and everyone knew it. The moral weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Emma's camera captured the moment of collective realization that swept across the faces of Isabella, Adrian, and even some of the wedding guests who were still present. Isabella took a deep breath, and Emma saw something shift in her friend's expression. It was as if a decision had been made, a burden finally accepted. You're right, Isabella said, her voice clear for the first time since the confrontation began. You're absolutely right, Marcus. I've been so consumed with my own guilt and fear that I forgot about what really matters, their justice, their closure. She turned to face the remaining guests, her wedding dress dirty and torn, her makeup ruined, but her posture suddenly straighter. I'm going to the police. Today. Right now. I'm going to tell them everything about what happened that night on Highway 1. I'm going to face the consequences of my actions, whatever they may be. Isabella, if you do that, I'll be implicated too. They'll charge me as an accessory. I know, Isabella said, turning to him. And I'm sorry, Adrian. I'm so sorry that I ever put you in that position. But you were right 3 years ago when you said we needed to come forward. If you want to tell the police that you wanted to stay and call for help but I forced you to leave, I'll back up your story. I'll take full responsibility. You shouldn't have to pay for my cowardice. Marcus was staring at Isabella as if seeing her for the first time. The anger in his eyes had been replaced by something more complex, sadness, disappointment, but also perhaps a glimmer of respect for the difficult choice she was finally making. I loved you, Marcus said quietly. I loved the woman I thought you were. I don't know if that woman ever really existed, or if she was just a role you were playing. She was real, Isabella insisted, stepping toward him. Marcus didn't back away, but he didn't move closer either. The woman who laughed with you, who supported your dreams, who wanted to build a life with you, that was all real, Marcus. But she was incomplete. She was the woman I wanted to be, built on top of the woman I actually was. A woman who made a terrible mistake and didn't have the courage to face it. Emma felt tears streaming down her face as she filmed. This was the Isabella she knew, the good person who had made an irredeemably bad choice. Her friend wasn't a monster, but she also wasn't innocent. She was human, flawed and complex and broken.
Isabella, still in her wedding dress, called 911 right there at the altar. Her voice was steady as she told the dispatcher that she needed to confess to a hit-and-run accident from 3 years ago, providing the date, location, and victim's name. The remaining wedding guests stood in stunned silence, watching this surreal scene unfold. Some were crying, others looked angry, and a few seemed almost relieved, as if they had been holding their breath for hours and could finally exhale. Emma kept her camera rolling, documenting this unprecedented moment of accountability. Within 20 minutes, 2 police cars arrived at the Rosewood Estate. Officers emerged, their expressions professional but clearly confused by the scene before them, a bride in a wedding dress, a groom who looked shell-shocked, and a disheveled man who immediately identified himself as a witness to the crime being confessed. Detective Sarah Morrison, a veteran officer in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, took charge. She listened to Isabella's confession, asked Adrian for his account, and then made the call that would change everything. Isabella Reyes, I'm placing you under arrest for vehicular manslaughter and leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death. As the detective read Isabella her rights, Marcus finally moved. He walked toward Isabella, and for a moment, Emma thought he might embrace her, might tell her he'd wait for her, that love would conquer all. But instead, he simply removed his wedding ring and placed it gently in Isabella's bound hands. I hope you find peace, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And I hope the Chin family gets the closure they deserve. But I can't be part of your life anymore, Isabella. I can't build a future with someone whose foundation was built on lies and tragedy. Isabella nodded, tears flowing freely. I understand. I'm sorry, Marcus. For everything. You deserved so much better than this. As the police led Isabella toward their car, her mother broke through the crowd, sobbing uncontrollably. My baby. Please, she's a good person. She made a mistake. Isabella's father wrapped his arms around his wife, his own face etched with grief and shock. Isabella's sister, Sophia, ran to Emma. Turn off the camera, she pleaded. Please, Emma. Haven't you filmed enough? Emma looked at her camera, then at Sophia's desperate face, then back at Isabella being placed in the back of the police car. She made a decision and lowered the camera, finally pressing stop. Some moments were too private, too painful to document. But she had captured enough. She had documented the unraveling of what was supposed to be the happiest day of her best friend's life, the revelation of a terrible secret, and the moment that secret transformed into accountability. Adrian approached the police car where Isabella sat.
Through the window, they looked at each other, two people bound by a terrible shared experience. Detective Morrison allowed them a moment. "I'm sorry," Isabella mouthed through the glass. Adrian placed his hand on the window. "Me too," he said. Then he turned to Detective Morrison. "I need to give a full statement. I was there that night. I helped cover it up. I'm equally responsible." The detective nodded. "We'll need you to come to the station. But Mr. Torres, based on what I've heard so far, your culpability may be different from Ms. Reyes. You wanted to call for help. You were coerced into leaving. That will be taken into account." As the police cars drove away with Isabella and Adrian following in a separate vehicle to give his statement, the remaining wedding guests began to disperse. Some were gossiping, already crafting the story they would tell about the most dramatic wedding they'd ever attended. Others were quiet, contemplative, perhaps thinking about their own secrets and the weight of choices made in moments of fear. Marcus stood alone at the altar, staring out at the ocean. His brother Daniel approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Let's get you out of here, man." But Marcus shook his head. "I need a minute. I need to process everything." Emma approached him cautiously, her camera equipment slung over her shoulder. "Marcus, I'm so sorry." He turned to look at her, and she was struck by how much older he looked than he had just hours ago. "Did you know?" he asked. "You were her best friend. Did you know about any of this?" "No," Emma said honestly. "I swear to you, I had no idea. I noticed she seemed stressed in the weeks before the wedding, but I thought it was just normal bride nerves. If I had known. I don't know what I would have done, but I would have done something." Marcus nodded, seeming to believe her. "What are you going to do with all that footage?" Emma looked down at her camera. It was a good question. She had hours of footage, the beautiful preparations, the ceremony, the confrontation, the confession, the arrest. It was probably the most dramatic footage any wedding videographer had ever captured. But what was she supposed to do with it? "I don't know," she admitted. "Technically, you and Isabella hired me to create a wedding video. But obviously, there's no wedding to commemorate. And the footage I captured, it's evidence now. The police might want it." "They'll want it," Marcus confirmed. "That video of Isabella on the phone, that shows her state of mind, her awareness of the crime, her attempts at restitution. It could help her case. Or hurt it. I'm not sure which." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. The golden hour light that Emma had planned to use for romantic couple shots now illuminated an empty altar and scattered dreams. "I really loved her," Marcus said quietly. "Even now, after everything, part of me still loves her." "Is that crazy?" "No," Emma said gently. "It's human. Love doesn't just disappear because someone disappoints us or hurts us. It takes time to fade." Marcus laughed bitterly. "I'm supposed to be on my honeymoon right now. Isabella and I were supposed to fly to Italy tomorrow. 2 weeks in Tuscany. I had it all planned, the vineyards, the cooking classes, the romantic dinners." He paused. "Now she'll be in jail, and I don't know what I'll be." 6 months had passed since the wedding that never was. Emma sat in her studio, the raw footage from that day loaded on her computer screens. She had given copies to the police, as expected, but she had kept the original files. For months, she hadn't been able to bring herself to watch them. But today, she finally felt ready. The case had made national news. "Runaway bride confesses to fatal hit and run on wedding day," had been the headline that dominated news cycles for weeks. The story had every element that captured public attention: a picture-perfect couple, a devastating secret, a dramatic reveal, and a question that everyone debated: was Isabella a monster or a broken person trying to make amends? The trial had been swift. Isabella had pleaded guilty to vehicular manslaughter and leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death. The judge had taken into account her confession, her years of anonymous support to the Chin family, and her genuine remorse. She had been sentenced to 6 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 3. Adrian had been charged as an accessory after the fact, but his sentence was far lighter, 2 years of probation and community service. The court acknowledged that he had been in shock, that he had been coerced by someone he loved, and that he had ultimately pushed for the truth to come out. Emma had visited Isabella twice in prison. Her friend looked different, older, thinner, but also somehow more at peace. "I can finally sleep at night," Isabella had told her during their last visit. "For the first time in 3 years, I'm not running from my past. It's terrible here, and I miss my freedom, and I know I've lost everything. But at least I'm not lying anymore." The Chin family had released a statement through their lawyer. Mrs. Linda Chin, David's widow, had said, "Nothing can bring my husband back or restore my daughter to who she was before the accident. But knowing the truth, knowing that the person responsible is being held accountable, does provide some measure of closure. We are grateful that Ms. Reyes finally found the courage to come forward, even though it took far too long." That statement had divided public opinion. Some people felt Isabella deserved no sympathy, she had killed someone and run away, after all. Others argued that her eventual confession and her years of quiet penance showed genuine remorse and deserved consideration. The debate raged on social media, in newspaper op-eds, and around dinner tables across the country. Marcus had left Monterey Bay shortly after the wedding disaster. He had taken a job with an architectural firm in Seattle, wanting to start fresh somewhere without constant reminders of Isabella. Emma had received one email from him, 3 months after the arrest. It simply said, "I'm doing okay. Taking it day by day. Thank you for revealing the whole truth that day. It was painful, but I needed to know everything. Take care, Marcus." Emma's business had experienced an unexpected boom. The notoriety of the case had brought attention to her work, and she had been flooded with inquiries from potential clients. Some wanted to hire her because of her skills as a videographer. Others, more cynically, seemed to hope she might capture similarly dramatic footage at their events. She turned down the latter group immediately. But the real question that had haunted Emma for 6 months was what to do with the footage. She had documented something extraordinary, a moment of truth, of reckoning, of human complexity at its most raw. Was it ethical to do anything with it beyond storing it in her archives? Did the story deserve to be told, or would sharing it be an exploitation of tragedy? Today, she had made a decision. She began editing the footage, not into a traditional wedding video, but into something else entirely, a documentary short film about truth, consequences, and the weight of secrets. She would include context about the Chin family, about the impact of the hit and run, about the complexity of guilt and redemption. But she wouldn't release it without permission. She had already reached out to 3 parties, Marcus, Isabella, and Mrs. Chin. Marcus had given his approval via email. "If it can help other people understand the importance of honesty and accountability, then some good can come from this nightmare." Isabella had written from prison, agreeing on one condition: if any proceeds from the film go to Emily and Grace Chen's education and medical care. The response from Mrs. Chen had been the most surprising. She had agreed to a video interview to be included in the film. Emma had driven to Sacramento last week to film it. Sitting in the modest living room of the Chin family home, Emma had watched as this dignified woman in her mid-40s spoke about her life after the accident. Behind her on the mantel were photos of David Chin, laughing with his daughters, holding baby Grace, kissing his wife on their wedding day. "Forgiveness is a complicated thing," Mrs. Chin had said, her voice steady but sad. "I don't know if I can forgive Isabella Reyes for what she did. She took my husband from me. She damaged my daughter's brain, changing Emily's entire future. But I also understand that she was a young woman who panicked and made a terrible choice that she's now paying for." Mrs. Chin had paused, looking directly into Emma's camera. "What I want people to understand is that actions have consequences that ripple outward in ways we can't always predict. Isabella made a choice in a moment of fear, and that choice affected dozens of lives, mine, my daughter's, her own, Adrian's, Marcus's, even yours as her friend. Every choice we make matters. Every time we choose fear over courage, lies over truth, we set events in motion that we can't take back." Emma had asked the question she'd been most nervous about. If you could speak to Isabella now, what would you say? Mrs. Chen had thought for a long moment. I would tell her that I see her humanity, even as I grieve what she took from me. I would tell her that 6 years in prison won't erase what happened, but her choice to finally tell the truth matters. And I would tell her that my daughter Emily, despite her brain damage, still laughs and plays and experiences joy. She's different from who she would have been, but she's still here. Grace is in therapy, working through her trauma, but she's strong. We're surviving. We're finding ways to live with what happened. And I hope Isabella can eventually do the same. Now, sitting in her studio, Emma incorporated Mrs. Chen's interview into the film. She included the moment of Adrian's revelation at the wedding, Isabella's breakdown, the phone conversation footage that revealed her hidden guilt and attempts at restitution, and the confession and arrest. But she also included context, statistics about hit-and-run accidents, interviews with legal experts about why people flee accident scenes, and psychologists discussing the impact of carrying guilt. The final runtime was 43 minutes. Emma titled it, "The Wedding Video Nobody Was Supposed to See, a Story About Truth and Consequences." She uploaded it to her private Vimeo account and sent the link to a select group of people, Marcus, Isabella, Mrs. Chen, and a few film festival curators she trusted. The response was immediate and emotional. Marcus wrote, "It's hard to watch, but you told the story fairly. You showed Isabella's humanity without excusing what she did. You honored the Chen family's pain. That's all I could have asked for." Isabella's response came through her lawyer. "Watching it made me relive the worst day of my life, but also the day I finally started telling the truth. If this film can prevent even one person from making the choices I made, then something good will have come from my terrible mistakes. Thank you for telling the whole story, Emma." Mrs. Chen's response was brief but powerful. "You treated my family with dignity. Thank you for that." 3 film festivals accepted the documentary. It won awards at 2 of them, Best Short Documentary and Audience Choice Award. But more importantly, it sparked conversations. After each screening, audiences stayed for hours discussing morality, justice, redemption, and the complexity of human nature. A local high school asked Emma to show the film to their students as part of a driver's education program. A law school used it to discuss the legal and ethical implications of hit-and-run accidents. A church group watched it and had a discussion about forgiveness and accountability. Emma had created something that mattered, something that went beyond just documenting an event. She had captured a moment of truth that resonated with people because it forced them to confront uncomfortable questions. What would you do in a moment of panic? Can someone who has done something terrible still be a good person? Is redemption possible? Does confession and punishment equal forgiveness? One evening, Emma received a call from an unknown number. When she answered, a young voice said, "Ms. Rodriguez? My name is Grace Chen. I'm calling because I watched your documentary in my high school civics class." Emma's breath caught. Grace Chen, the younger daughter who had witnessed her father's death and her sister's traumatic injury. "I wanted to thank you," Grace continued, her voice mature beyond her 16 years. "For a long time, I was angry that we didn't know who had hit us. I imagined this heartless monster who didn't care at all. But your film showed me something different. It showed me a person, flawed and scared and wrong, but still a person. It didn't make what happened okay. Nothing will ever make it okay. But it helped me understand that people are complicated. And that helped me, somehow." Emma was crying as she responded. "Grace, thank you for calling. Thank you for watching. I was so worried that the film might hurt you or your family more." "It did hurt," Grace admitted. "Watching footage of the woman who killed my dad was really hard. But it also helped. And I think that's important. Something can hurt and help at the same time. That's what growing up has taught me. That's what that night taught my whole family." After they hung up, Emma sat in silence for a long time. She thought about Isabella in prison, trying to make peace with her past. She thought about Marcus in Seattle, rebuilding his life and learning to trust again. She thought about Adrian, doing his community service and attending therapy, working through his own trauma and guilt. And she thought about the Chin family, Linda, Grace, and Emily, carrying on with lives forever altered by one terrible night. The wedding video that nobody was supposed to see had become something else entirely. It had become a testament to the complexity of human nature, a reminder that truth matters, and a difficult meditation on justice, mercy, and the long road to redemption. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notification for more videos. Thanks.